Hey, what up? Welcome to the Dope Souls Collective podcast, where dope souls can vibe, connect, heal, and grow because dope souls go through real shit. This podcast was created to nurture, support, and educate survivors and growth-oriented people. And without further ado, I give you your host. She's a transformational life coach, a mental health coach with a master's of psychology. She's also a couples and healthy sexuality coach. And I can't forget to mention she's my dope-ass friend. This is Ramani Malco presenting to you the host and founder of the Dope Souls Collective podcast, the one and only Trisheana Hunter.
Hello, Dope Souls. I get to interview today the woman that was the second person that interviewed me, but was a pivotal point for me in the comfort of me telling my journey, sharing my story. Celeste the Therapist, who had me on, I believe it was season 3. It was episode 133 of her show, and allowed me to really share my story. And she actually had let me know that there were some things I should have been pretty angry about after I shared my journey on her show. But this woman, this amazing queen here, hails out of Boston, Miss Celeste the Therapist, the dopest therapist that you're going to find anywhere in the country. And she has decided to grace me, or rather y'all, with her dopeness on the Dope Soul Collective podcast. Celeste, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for that introduction. I appreciate it. I'm really good. I can't complain. How are you today?
I am remarkable. It's busy, mom life, coach life, podcasting life.
Nice.
I'm trying to get on your level so I can learn how to do it all. How do you do it all?
No, it's not my level. It's like just leveling up, being better than what you were yesterday. Like that's kind of what it is. The way I do it is I just consider myself really balanced. I think as we're trying to do it all and achieve a lot of goals, we tend to leave out the internal stuff. And so for me, that's something that is non-negotiable for me. So that because I take care of inside of me, I'm able to create space for external things. Yeah.
I love that you said it's non-negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get to that point? That's more powerful than you made it sound, because so many people, it is negotiable. They let everybody else nip away at whatever they do for self-care. So how do you keep it non-negotiable?
I keep it non-negotiable because I think about my why on a consistent basis. And part of my why is I want to live life and not survive life. And now that I understand the blueprint to doing that, it makes it easier for me to do things when I don't feel like doing it. So the non-negotiation that takes place is also with my own thoughts, not just with people. So I'm really mindful of how the feeling of not wanting to do some of the things that I do to create balance happens. And I also know how to push past those circumstances and allow it to happen.
That's incredible. Now, I coach a lot of people in this area, but it seems that people are always struggling to get to that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you're fighting not just your past trauma, your past upbringing. You were also fighting the energy in the world. The energy in the world produces a lot of chaos. It's also, if you're in America, the energy of the world talks about pretty much surviving life. There's a lot of products and things that are advertised to make sure that we feel less than so we can purchase more. We're very consumer society. So when you think about not just your own things that you're fighting and the energy of the world, there's a lot of intentionality that has to take place in order for you to get to where you're trying to go. You have a lot of forces against you, but it's not impossible. But I think knowing that is happening should be the blueprint to why you become more intentional about the day to day, because it's just so much going against the direction that I'm going. I'm intentional about understanding what I need to do for myself.
That is powerful. It was, when Ramani and I had the podcast episode 1, we were talking about how mental health is the end thing. And it's being capitalized on.
Yeah.
And we're being sold our path to mental health as opposed to being told to look inside and to do the inner work.
Oh, wow.
And be non-negotiable. There's a price tag on whether or not you get to have mental health self-care.
Absolutely. And, when I started my podcast in 2018, that was even prior to the podcast, going online, talking to people that looked like me, because I didn't come from money and access to mental wellness was not available to me. And because, I got a job where insurance was attached, I was able to get a therapist and recognize how life started to look different when I started to work on my mindset. I wanted to make sure that other people had access to it. But you're absolutely right. And especially now with everything that's happening in the world and the pandemic, so many people are learning how to market and capitalize off of what wellness looks like. And so like people like you and I can continue to spread the message on looking within and utilizing what you have and starting where you are. And that's not something that the commercials are going to tell us to do. But it's something that, despite what the commercials are telling us, is something that we have to be mindful and do for ourselves.
And it's like those same advertisements, no matter where they're coming from, are telling you you're not enough.
Exactly.
You can't do what I am.
Yeah, I mean, they have to, because we think about what's their goal. Their goal is to make sure we purchase and buy. And so like, that's okay. They can have that goal. I don't have to subscribe to that goal, but most of us choose to subscribe to that goal when we are not subscribing to our goal. And a lot of times we don't even have our goal written anywhere or not clear on what it is. And so we just succumb and go along with the alignment with society.
It's telling us what the goal should be, what the end game should be, and it doesn't fit us.
It doesn't fit us.
You mentioned you didn't come from money and that you didn't have those resources. Do you mind telling me, because I didn't get to know that part about you. Tell me about how you came up.
Yeah. So, born and raised in Boston. So I grew up in I was abused at like 9 or 10. And that kind of changed, it just definitely changed and started the cycle of depression for me. I would not have called it depression. I know what it is now that I'm older. I'm 39. But I remember I used to write and music. I had to go to church. I will say a lot of the things I talk about is in the Bible. I look at the Bible as a blueprint, not as with certain ways that some Christianity churches do things, it's more of repetition and not allowing it to the things to resonate. So I will say church did help because there were some principles that I learned. But the main thing was like music, writing, and then school. So I grew up in a time where entrepreneurship wasn't a thing. And also I learned that like if you went to school, you can make more money. All around me, I was surrounded by drugs and I lived in the hood. And so one of the things I recognized was that there was more to life outside of what I had seen. And so I just tried to figure out what that looked like for me, not recognizing I was fighting a system that was never designed for me. And so the more my will and my commitment to doing better than what I did yesterday or trying to break the barriers, that's kind of what excelled me to work on myself. But I know with the depression, what helped me survive was school. And so when school was over, when I finished my bachelor's, it's when I started to like really struggle because now I don't have that Band-Aid. And then that's when I was going to go to therapy.
I talked to a lot of people from our communities, and I think that's kind of a common theme that we don't know what's depression because you don't talk about it. Mental health doesn't get talked about it. I've seen people that either have great experiences in the church or it's downplayed. you know, you need to pray harder, or in certain families, oh, you need to suck it up. Life is hard. Get over it. And you don't get to have the label of depression. That's not okay. Or it's not godly. And, you know, tainting of your faith until you get older and you're like, oh, wait a minute, something was wrong. It wasn't all in my head.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't want to like knock the fact that church did provide community for people.
Yes.
Growing up. Especially if you go back to slavery times, they did give us Sundays. And I know that's why those traditions have been passed on. And that's a lot of the times, a lot of the only things that our caregivers know about, like healing, is on Sundays. Monday through Saturday may look different, but Sundays was like their healing day. And we deserve more than a Sunday to heal, right? It should be like 7 days a week where we have these systems build up, but you're absolutely right.
And so what advice would you give to somebody who, you know, does go to church on Sundays and they get their guidance, that blueprint from the Bible, but maybe they feel like they need something else and possibly even have guilt from feeling like they still need something else?
Yeah. You know, one of the things that is important to understand is that, especially people that are avid churchgoers or readers of the Bible, a lot of times they're reciting these scriptures, but not applying them to their life. So the things that you are learning on Sunday, the music that is like bringing you some form of joy, play it throughout the week, right? As you're studying on the scriptures that have helped you. You know, allow them to resonate throughout the week. You know, Jesus is one of the, regardless of if somebody is into religion or not, people say that he's the one person that has, you know, like the person that we emulate or try to look up to. And he had community. He talked about his emotions. He talked about struggling. Right. Like, and so it's baffling when, you know, some systems in the church would downplay people's emotions when the person that they look up to talked about them when he was struggling, and made time for stillness, right? Mm-hmm. Like he was on the move a lot, but he would, with his disciples, he would say, you know, I need my time alone. And so like for people that are struggling in that arena, you know, Sunday is one, if you go to church on Sunday, that's one of the days that you are making time to like be intentional about something that you're doing. Monday through Saturday, when are you doing that? And a lot of times we're not doing that. And so for people that may be in this boat, try to emulate what you do Sunday. And I know you can't do it for the two hours a day, Monday through Saturday, but you can give 15 minutes of your time to be intentional. Yeah. So, and, you know, like, I think for whether we're talking about church on Sunday or something else people do, you know, that's feeding your spirit. And one of the things about like breakfast, lunch, and dinner is that we don't say, well, I ate yesterday, I'm not going to eat today. So when I think about like when earlier you asked what helps me, I'm continuing to feed my spirit. I understand what's happening in the energies of the world. But I don't just do it one day and say, because I understand that's what's happening, I'm not going to continue to feed my spirit. I'm doing it every day. It's my medicine for living. And so like really thinking about what your medicine for living is, what brings you joy, right? Like that's important. That internal joy is something that nobody can take away regardless of what's happening around you.
Yeah, that internal joy. A lot of people are really struggling to tap into that. Mm-hmm. And I think that this applies whether you're in the traditional Christian church or whatever religion that you practice. Your spiritual diet is as important as your physical diet and what you put into your bodies and what you consume. And consumption, I think we've all been kind of programmed to consume trash. Pretty much all day long, scroll through social media, watch as many mindless things as you possibly can. And then before you know it, you're mindlessly following, oh, this is how much you spend on your mental health and your gym membership and your diet shake and all the rest of that stuff.
Yeah, it's true. And it's important to know that, there's this book that I'm reading called Stolen Focus by Johanna. And he talks about, he went through, because he was so overwhelmed with, the fact that like he felt kind of addicted to his phone. He's seen people around him always on their phone. He went through and he interviewed people. And so like, I haven't finished it. I'm close to the end, but part of his struggle is that when he's talking to these people that's created these devices, whether it's Google or Pinterest, they were designed to keep us on the phone, right? Mm-hmm. So, and he says like they owe us it's like their responsibility to be more mindful on what they're providing to us. But on the other hand, he talks about our willpower and the things we need to be intentional on to make sure we're not mindlessly scrolling. I have a limit on my phone and on social media. I don't have any notifications of social media or email on my phone. And I just something I don't do it just to hear buzzing going on but that buzzing is to help give endorphins. For some people, that buzzing alerts them. And so, for people that find themselves struggling with creating that joy, I always say, well, I want you to really be intentional and look at what you're spending your time on. Right. As I'm working on my financial wellness, I had to look at what I was purchasing because this card just kept swiping. As I'm working on my eating, I had to write down and look at what I was eating. The same thing that goes for your time, because a lot of times it's not about people not having time. People will say things like, I need to find time. You'll never find time. We always all have 24 hours. It's about how do I create time and implement it into my life? And so like, it's the more we take accountability for our time, the more we take accountability for what we are choosing to do. I find that people tend to find themselves creating that joy that they desire. Without that intentionality, without creating that space, without looking at what you're doing now and actually reprogramming it, because that's the dope thing about our mind is that I don't care what you've gone through. Our mind, we can really work on recalibrating our mind. But unfortunately, most of us don't know how. And a lot of times it looks like it's attached to a dollar amount.
I think it most times is attached to a dollar amount.
Yeah.
And you said it a couple of times, creating your joy.
Mm-hmm.
I think that with that dollar amount, we aren't taught to create our own joy. We're taught to depend on somebody else and to constantly be in a pursuit of a joy that is manufactured. It's not realistic.
Yeah.
Or tangible. So we just keep dishing out the money or, pursuing it, paying whoever we're paying, buying the next book.
Yeah.
But nobody teaches us how to create.
Well, yeah. And I think it doesn't, a lot of the things that I've done to create joy, there was no money attached. Like going for a hike really helps me now. On YouTube, I listen to music or motivational videos. Now I do go to the gym, but before I worked out in my home, right? I didn't have money or access to or time to go to the gym because I had the kids were a lot younger. So as I was working on creating my joy and creating my wellness, I didn't have money to do that. And so that's why, as I'm talking about use what you have, start where you are, I'm talking from personal experience. Obviously now, like my money situation looks different. My time looks different. But when I initially started, it was not that way. And a lot of times people will think, well, if I had this and if I had that, things will be okay. And I'm not going to take that away from you because it may make things a little easier. But if you only think that way, let's say you get to that point, you're going to find yourself still struggling with, why do I still feel this way? Because you weren't part of the journey. So like in this podcast, like it's free to listen to a podcast, right? It's free to go on YouTube. It's free to go for a walk outside and let that sun soak up in your system. But that's not the way that we were taught. We're taught Hennessy, we're taught partying, right? Yep. We're taught to go on Netflix. And we're taught to eat bad food. So, a lot of the reasons why people that look like you and I are struggling too, we don't have that education behind the little things that we can do. So it looks like the wellness is not attainable for us when that's just not true.
Absolutely. And it's like the rabbit hole. If you go on YouTube, TikTok, any of them, it's designed that the minute you finish that one thing that you went to look at, something else immediately comes up. So before you know it, you've lost 2 hours of your life and set your eyesight back 3 years. I know that you've come a long way, and you were a really big part of my journey. And part of the reason I did the Dope Soul Collective podcast is because dope souls go through real shit. We get to this side of it and it's like, oh, wait, she's got her shit together. She's got it figured out. No, we're figuring it out. There was some bumpy roads. It might look okay now, but it wasn't always. So I love that, you're honest and you're open about like, yeah, I didn't always have a gym membership. I couldn't always go. I started where I was. And the one resource we always have is us. We get to choose what we do with that resource. It's like taking care of a car.
Yes. Yeah.
Doesn't matter if you have a brand new car or an older car. If you don't maintenance your vehicle, it's not going to continue to run. Perfect. If you run your body on Hennessy and turning up and partying and YOLO or whatever it is that the kids say, because I guess I'm old now, you can't help but wonder, when it breaks down, like, what could I have done differently? Because eventually, if it may be your spirit or it could be your body or both, in my case. And it's going to break and you're going to be like, how the hell did I end up here?
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. Now, I switched Hennessy for Casamigos, but I'm going to have my Casamigos and party every now and then. But before it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And it wasn't because I was just like enjoying my time. It was because I was putting a Band-Aid on my life. So I definitely don't want to come up here and act like I don't be drinking my Casamigos, because I do. But it's not in order to cope.
I'm laughing so hard because we're so much alike, and I'm learning as we're talking now how much alike we really are. Shout out to George Clooney for developing the best tequila I've ever had. My favorite tequila, Casamigos tequila, which, there are some days that call for just a cold beer and relax with a book. And then there's other days where it's like, yeah, I'll take the Casamigos on the rocks. So, of course, I like your taste in tequila because I gave up Hennessy for Casamigos as well.
That's funny.
Dark liquors for when you're younger. But I think that lends to balance, right? People expect, okay, well, she's a mental health professional. She's a life coach. She's a therapist. Oh, she's always together. She doesn't do this. She doesn't do that. No. We're human.
Yeah. And my clients call me the hood therapist sometimes. And, I think that that's why I've been very successful in my career. It's because I don't come at people as if I'm a peer and I know it all. And I'm helping them learn themselves. And I'm also mindful and transparent about the fact that, like, I understand and I've been there and I am there sometimes, right? And I don't always miss the mark. I don't always create balance on a regular basis. I'm human, life happens. But I do also think the difference is that I'm constantly practicing my intentionality around feeding my spirit or my medicine for living, that when life does happen, or if I am struggling, it looks different where I'm able to impulsively make that change, or I can feel it in my system. A lot of times, for people who have grew up in trauma or grew up in really jacked up situations, your body and would give you signs that you are not okay. But because those signs were ignored, you learn to live life adjusting to that back pain, adjusting to that stomach turning. And so the things that your system was created to do to help you learn that you're not okay, you've always ignored those signs. Now that I'm in a different space, I understand those signs. I understand if my stomach's turning or if my back is feeling like a weight is lifted on it, that I'm starting to struggle. Right. And so it's really important to learn those signs and also know that you're not supposed to live in a state of stress, but you have to learn what that stress looks like for you, because everybody's stresses are looking different. But I am the same like you. I just happen to have understood, and I now understand the signs that lets me know I'm not okay.
So for a lot of our people coming up with those communities that are in constant state of anxiety, stress, heightened awareness, that PTSD that comes up from growing up in unsafe homes or unsafe communities and environments, what would you say to them?
I guess the first thing is just kind of like recognizing it and grieving. Being Black in America, grieve, right? Because we are not in a system that was ever designed for us, especially if you come from a community where there was a lot of violence outside of the home. You could have had a great home life and things outside of the home, right?
Right.
So I would definitely say kind of grieve, because I was just going through life not recognizing that I was struggling because of the systems that I was a part of, whether it was the community and inside the home. And so like, that's important. Like, you cannot start a journey if you can't acknowledge. And I've had people like talk to me about their life and their childhood, and they're talking about it as if they're reading a book. They're very disconnected from it. So in order to like start a journey, you got to recognize that what has happened, and then look at where you're trying to go. What is it that you're trying to do? A lot of times we feel like we're all over the place and this cuts look good. Let me just think about like, what is it that I need? And a great way to look at the full picture is a wellness wheel. And if you were to Google the word wellness wheel, different wheels come up, but essentially it talks about, it's a wheel with different parts, kind of like a pie graph, with financial, social, environmental, spiritual, wellness, professional. And so if you look at that and let that be like your blueprint, and go through those different areas and look at where you feel like you're doing well at. And I tell people to rate it from 1 to 10. If you're doing like 9 or 10, like that's good. Keep on the right track. But if you're rating below 5, right, look at what you need, right? A lot of times what you need may not be available in the moment, but there's something powerful about creating a plan. Your mind gets to settle down. You start to realize like, I am on track. And that's a powerful thing that you can do for yourself. But if you're walking around telling yourself, I don't know what I need, I'm struggling, but not saying what you're struggling with. And also your language around what you are feeling, making sure you're not saying I am sad or I am depressed or I am anxious, and rather say I feel sad, I feel anxious, I feel overwhelmed. So you're not owning that emotion, because if you own that emotion, then your brain is saying, okay, I guess that's what we're going to do, Celeste. We're going to be sad. We are depressed. No, we feel depressed. That's separate.
Right.
Those are really great tops. That's not who we are. So those are great tips for people that might find themselves struggling and trying to climb out of it, is to really look at life holistically and create a plan for the areas that you find yourself not doing well in.
That's kind of like, why I developed Moving Mountains. Because you're kind of stuck in this and you don't exactly know what you need, but your body is telling you, your spirit is telling you what feels good and what doesn't. Now, that doesn't mean you need to listen to everything that feels good, because if, drugs or unhealthy sexuality or what makes you feel good, you probably need to reevaluate some things. But your body tells you your stress level. It tells you you're not eating what you're supposed to. No, you might not be able to change it today, but you can take a step in the direction towards it. You might not have the money like she was talking about. She had to do home gym. She had to watch YouTube videos and things like that before she actually had a gym membership. But your body is telling you, your body's usually telling you what your spirit's saying, because you're exhausted. You can't take anymore. You're lashing out in anger. And you may not know why, but those are signs that you're collapsing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, like she said, especially as I learned about food and how it plays a role in my mental health and gut health. And I tried to make a change and changed everything. And it didn't work out that way. And I started little by little. I started with breakfast, right? And so regardless of what area that you're trying to work on, like start small, make sustainable goals for yourself. And as you're doing those small sustainable goals, celebrate that. Absolutely. For some people, I say, let's start with making up your bed, right? Some people aren't used to creating healthy habits that they create these goals to keep themselves in a system to think that they can't not do it when you absolutely can do it. The same way we build unhealthy habits, we absolutely have the ability to build healthy habits, but we got to start small. It's important.
I think it's important. I tell my clients all the time to have a list of rewards from really, really tiny things like a Starbucks to if I hit this goal, I'll let myself take that vacation or plan that trip.
Yeah.
We are taught about punishing ourselves for mistakes.
We are.
Self-loathing, you messed this up, you really bombed that with the kids, you didn't make this happen, this client didn't get what they needed. We're taught to really punish ourselves for our failures, even when they're not necessarily failures. But we're not taught to celebrate the wins, to overlook it, to accomplish something that you set out to accomplish and not even acknowledge it and just go, okay, so what's next? What am I going to do next? What am I going to take on now? Right. Without even breathing and going, damn, that was dope. I really did that.
Yeah. And I've learned to do that on my own, whether it's the system in your home or America's system, it doesn't celebrate things in that way. So I always tell people, be your biggest cheerleader. Now, when I started in this field, no one was like, oh my gosh, you're going into the mental health field. Like Black people wasn't into therapy and mental health like that. And I was my biggest cheerleader. Now, a lot of people celebrate me and praise me, but it's not the thing that I thrive off of, right? It's not the thing that got me to keep going. It's my goal. And my goal is like, I did so well, like understanding myself and mental health. And I recognize my passion is to work with people. And I wanted people to experience the same thing. And so regardless of who was cheering for me or who said that was a good job, I was going to start this podcast or leave my job and start my practice, like my goal was in front of me. And that's what kind of helped me propel. It's just so important.
It's why it's so important to listen to your inner voice. Your inner voice will lead you to your purpose every time. But we have so much chaos. And it goes back to what we were saying with all these people that develop the phones. You're supposed to be doing this. So then you don't listen to that inner voice. And then you don't become an entrepreneur. You don't end up starting your own business.
Right.
You stay an employee.
Yep.
And you don't grieve. You just kind of keep going through the motions without even thinking about it.
Surviving. Yeah. Yep. So true.
Tell me a little bit about your podcast.
So it's called Celeste The Therapist, and the goal is to help people shift the way they think. And I talk to people who are empowering other people. People are familiar with Alcoholics Anonymous. It works really well. There's no licensed clinicians that are a part of Alcoholics Anonymous. And so my goal is to decolonize what mental health looks like. And, as you said earlier, the system has created lack of access by saying, like, if you're paying all this money for insurance, but if you can't find nobody that look like you can't use that insurance to go see somebody else that may not be a licensed professional, but may give you what you need. So I created the podcast because there's so many people like you that are doing amazing things to empower other people. And I believe there's power in community and power in knowing you're not alone. And so every week people get to listen to someone's story and they're doing something different that's empowering people in some capacity. And so people are starting to understand they're not alone. And that was the goal behind it.
And it's remarkable because the stories don't get told. And I still listen to it.
Oh,
it guides me and it helps me because we don't have enough people telling our stories.
Nope.
A lot of our people don't have insurance. I'm also finding more recently that even when they have insurance, they're being priced out of care.
Yep.
A lot of therapists aren't taking insurance anymore. Rates are $300 an hour.
Yep.
Because, and in fairness, it's because the mental health professionals with the pandemic got exhausted too. And people think we have it together all the time, and mental health professionals need mental health professionals and care and self-care because we do the heavy lifting. But in that, a lot of people have been left without care that they need because a lot of professionals during this pandemic got burnt out with the state of our people, Black people in America, and the grieving process we go through daily. Black therapists and mental health professionals, coaches, it gets burdensome.
Yeah, it does. It does. And it's really important to just continue to listen to your voice and give yourself what you need, because the country's not going to tell you to pause and be still. I mean, the pandemic did it, but then it was so much chaos around it. So just know, like, for people listening that are embarking on this journey, that even though I talk about, you got to do this and do that, know that it doesn't feel good. Your system will reject what you're trying to give it because it's just not used to it. It's used to chaos. It could be used to feeling down all the time. So don't be deterred by the lack of the instant gratification. Like you said earlier, like some substances can give you instant gratification, but the long-term effects of that doesn't work out, right? Like you lose time, and if it becomes like a habit. So just understand that, the same way a heart transplant happens, the body sometimes rejects a good heart, right? They're taking out the bad heart, and the body takes time to acclimate to the good heart. Because it's a foreign substance. Even though it's a good substance you're trying to give to your system, it's still foreign. So you got to give it time, which is why I'm big on like celebrating the moments, because it doesn't just like come all together like really quickly.
Yeah. When you start to shift your energy towards the positive, it feels strange because it's not binging on garbage or eating trash foods or turning out.
But when you get there, like when you start to create a habit for it, your system will like crave it, right? Like I go to a class. I get up early to go and work out because, I struggle with depression. So that's important and non-negotiable. And there are moments where I'm like, I don't feel like getting up, but my body be like, Celeste, we got to get up, because it's like it's used to getting up. So it's like I push past the feeling. I don't always feel like getting up. I really do prefer to sleep, and that sleep will feel good in the moment, but it's going to have some long-term gratification for the day, because I'm going to be like, oh, I should have got this medicine in earlier. Then I'll like try to like change my mind about going later. So that's why I try to do it first thing in the morning, because I don't have to worry about listening to that negative noise and fighting that off. It's one less thing I got to fight off.
And we, as professionals, we still struggle. Like my thing, I still struggle with depression, PTSD, and anxiety. Those are still my things. And the steps are still just that important. Just taking one step. You want to stay in bed. You don't want to move. There are days when your biggest accomplishment is that you rolled your ass out of bed. You got up. You got in the shower. You combed your hair.
Yeah.
A lot of people during COVID, we got stuck in the house with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't realize you were distracted from somebody you didn't like very much.
Yeah.
Until you were stuck.
Yeah, that is so true. Yep. And now that, we're here, if you really want to make changes, know like it's going to feel hard, because it's kind of like, well, like sometimes people choose the hard they know than the hard they don't know. And it's a choice. But there's no, sometimes when people come to me with some things, and they know what they need to do, I'd say, you know what you need to do. It's just that it doesn't feel good to have to do that, to have to let that person go, or to have to say no. So the right thing to do, or the thing that we need, is typically going to be hard, but it's the reward. Some people that work a 9 to 5, they get up every day not feeling like it, but their bills have to get paid. And because we're really great survivors, we push past the feeling. So I'm always reminding people that you already push past the feeling anyways, just in a different capacity. You have the intellectual ability to push past the feeling when it comes to living life. We do it for survival. We can do it for living.
And we deserve to do more than surviving.
Yeah, we do.
We deserve to thrive, to win.
Yeah.
What you were saying right now reminds me of, well, I mean, not reminds me, but you have a journal that's 365 days of intentional living. And notice she didn't say intentional living today or right now. It's a daily dedication, right?
Yeah.
To living intentionally.
Yeah. Yeah. Intentional is my word. And, when I created the journal, it was before my podcast. I was going on social media, and just 5 days a week, I would come on at 12 o'clock on Periscope and, YouTube. And I would just talk about different things that people struggled with. And that ended up becoming, and I would have some kind of quote I would share on Instagram, and right under that quote, I would write down a summary about it. And the words under the Instagram post became my book. I would talk to people about writing. And as I said earlier, writing was my saving grace. I didn't know I was doing some kind of healthy coping strategy as I was writing. And so I would talk to people about it. People weren't aware of what does that look like? How do I start? So I just kind of wanted to give people a blueprint. And I said, even if you don't get the guided journal, I said, go to the dollar store, grab a notebook, and just write every day. How are you feeling? What do you need? Right. So, I really hope people take away from what I'm saying in regards to like the journal and everything else is that do not allow money to be a factor in your healing process. I don't want to diminish the fact that money can make some accesses a lot easier, right? I don't want to diminish that. And that is true. We're going to say that's true. I'm not going to argue with you on that, but I'm also going to say what's also true is that, we have innate abilities, and we have power within us. But there's so many forces that we're competing against. It makes it hard to access. And so like create space daily to try to access, your inner power by tapping into your emotions. I say we should know our emotions the way we know our ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. There's no reason why that shouldn't be taught in the schools, right? Like, I don't care how good at math and science I am. When life happens, math and science is not going to get me through those moments. It's not going to calm me down.
There's no equation that it solves every problem.
Yeah. So, even though we weren't taught that, right? If you came from a different socioeconomic status, maybe you were taught that. But people that live in survival all the time, we're not taught that. And so we make these decisions based off of our emotions. And then we try to figure out why we can't do what we need. A lot of times we got to tap in to our emotions. And so like really make space to ask yourself, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? And what do I need? Because we'll be able to like, oh, I know how I'm feeling. I'm feeling down. I'm feeling anxious. And then we'll say, period. I need you to change that period to a comma. I feel anxious because if I'm just saying I feel anxious, then my brain's like, okay, we're just feeling anxious. That's it.
Keep feeling anxious.
I guess that's what we're doing.
That's what we're doing.
Anxious. But if I say I feel anxious, comma, because I have to speak in front of people, right? I'll say like, I feel anxious because I have to speak in front of people. What does that mean? Well, Celeste, you already speak in front of people. What is it about speaking in front of them is creating this anxiety? What is it that you need? You need to take some deep breaths, right? Now I get into solution focus mode when I talk about the why. And so a lot of times we're not able to get into that solution focus mode because we put a period behind the feeling and not focus on why we are feeling what we're feeling.
I'd like to add that as you learn your emotions, or as we learn our emotions, we aren't always taught to sit with our emotions.
Yeah.
We're supposed to just push through the negative emotions, don't be a punk. Mm-hmm. It'll get better. Pat on the back, pray a little harder. Mm-hmm. Your emotions are real. You get to sit with them. You get to process them and let them be for a moment. Mm-hmm. And then just like Celeste says, you follow that because. Mm-hmm. And then follow it with action.
Yep. And no judgment with your emotions. I try not to say good and bad emotions. I just say they may feel a little bit more vulnerable. But again, emotions are a sign that something's wrong, right? Or that we need something. Something could be right or wrong, right? But the emotion is there to lead us. But unfortunately, we allow us ourselves to be led by the emotions and not look at it as a warning sign or something that we need or something that's going on. We can recognize the happy stuff when we feel happy because whatever, right? We can recognize that. The other stuff we were taught not to recognize it. If I was crying and there was no blood, why are you crying? I learned to stuff my emotions, right? So a lot of times it's not because you don't have the ability to do it. A lot of times, even if you weren't explicitly taught to not cry when your needs were not met, or when you were struggling, you had nobody to talk to, you taught yourself how to swallow your emotions. And guess what happens? It kind of like goes into different pockets. It will go into pockets of my back, my stomach, right? It will go into pockets of what you choose to do and not do. So we got to really work on moving those emotions through, which is why like moving your body is so great. Writing is so great because you're not letting those emotions, those hard emotions to just sit and just ruminate in your system. You can actually begin to process them better that way.
I mean, how many of us heard that growing up? I'll give you something to cry for. So we learned just don't cry, put it down, pretend like everything is fine.
Yeah.
I want to add to the notes when we're finished here. I want to add that it's a feelings wheel, right? Is that the right term for it?
The feelings wheel. I mean, there's a feelings wheel. Yeah, there is a feelings wheel.
I want to add that and also add that just like she was saying, yes, you can go to the 99-cent store and you can get a journal. And we talked about don't say I am depressed, I am sad, I am angry. Mm-hmm. Acknowledge the feeling. Mm-hmm. The feelings are designed to be a guide or a compass, mm-hmm. but they're not designed to control us. They're our warning system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you have to pay attention to your warning system. I go back to the analogy of the car. Mm-hmm. Your check engine is light. Your light is on. You're supposed to be paying attention to it before you're on the side of the road with a car that's on fire.
Yes.
You put it out now. Get a journal and start with I am and write your own story. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Like Celeste said, creating your own joy, intentionally creating your life. You can't change today. You're in the middle of it. You can change the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Every moment counts. Every moment's a chance to create change. If you're still breathing, there's room to create change. The I am statements are powerful, which is why I talk about not saying them with emotions, but you can say them with where you're trying to go. I am powerful. I am strong. When my kids leave the house, they have to give me a positive affirmation before they leave, because guess what? When they're out the house, they're not surrounded by someone that is feeding them life all the time. They're surrounded by the world, right? And so their sneakers may not look good. My daughter doesn't like getting her hair done. She loves looking a hot mess, but she knows she's powerful.
Yes.
And that's what's important to me is the internal stuff, the things that I was not taught. And so we can teach ourselves that, right? And we can speak life into ourselves, even if life wasn't spoken to me, doors was closed for me. And so like I began to speak it to myself. And one of the things I always say is that, you have more power than you realize. You just have to begin to have faith, to believe in yourself, because when you have faith and believe in yourself, no one can ever take that faith away from you.
My uncle taught me something before he passed, and it was understanding that you're making progress. You might not have arrived yet.
Yeah.
And you'll stumble and you'll fall and you'll trip and you'll make mistakes. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter how big it is. You can always say, I'm making progress.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And if each moment is progress over the last and each day is progress over the last, even if it's minuscule, even if it's inches, mm-hmm. you're still crawling out of the darkness.
Yeah. It all matters.
And you're tapping into your power.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Tell everybody where they can find you.
So if people want to find me, I'm everywhere at Celeste the Therapist. And I have a website with links to everything at celestethetherapist.com.
Absolutely. It's also where you can find her journal, 365 Days of Intentional Living. Mm-hmm. Her podcast is on all platforms, and I do highly recommend that all of you listen to it. It's one of my favorite podcasts because she is so dope. And her guests are pretty awesome too. There's some guests that make me feel guilty for how funny they are. I was like, I'm not supposed to laugh at that.
I know. What do you think? How do you think I felt?
Wow. I was like, that's not supposed to be funny. But you guys have to go find that episode.
But you learn a lot, right? I try to use it as a teaching tool. Because again, I didn't have access. And so I don't forget my people. I can't, I love my people, and I want to see people heal because we're really dope people.
Yes, we are. Mm-hmm. And because this is the Dope Soul Collective, promote your dopeness. Tell us something dope about you that they don't know already.
I started an indoor garden. And I'm excited about it. I have moments of anxiety. I was just listening prior to this. I was working out and listening to some next steps I need to take. So yeah, I think that's pretty dope because when I was trying to make changes to my life, I bought a bunch of greens. I didn't even know what to do with them. And so now I was like, I need to get my life together, but I was like, I can't do it this way. But now I love greens. Yes. And so, yeah, so that's exciting for me. The idea of being able to like harvest my own food is so exciting. I just started. So don't come for me and try to ask me for help. I could talk about mental health, but right now the garden stuff is I'm pretty new. So, but that's pretty dope.
Absolutely. I want to thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm going to say publicly on my podcast, thank you for helping me begin my journey on yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This was really dope. I love it. I love the name. I love everything about it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you so much. All of her information will be in the description here so that you can reach her. We're going to find you a link to a feelings wheel.
Yeah.
So even if you can't get in contact with a therapist or somebody to guide you, you can click the feelings wheel and evaluate for yourself and start working on those I am statements.
Yes.
Pat, any last words from you?
No, I would just say, if this feels good, what you're listening to, whether it's this or whatever it is, like if you're at church on Sunday, where it feels good, like ask yourself, how can I be intentional about bringing it into the next day? And taking the lessons that you learn from this podcast or a book that you read or whatever, and not just letting it be the one time you hear it, write it down and be intentional about the change. So thank you.
Absolutely. And always give yourself permission to be making progress. And that's this episode. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thanks.